All is fair in love and war.
Miss Daphne Bridgerton.
You have no idea what it is to have one's entire life reduced to a single moment.
The time has come for the social season.
Tighter!
She to breathe, Mama!
My name is Lady Whistledown. You do not know me, but I know you. This is what they have been trained for since birth. Which young ladies might succeed at securing a match?
You've always amused me, Miss Bridgerton. Ever since I was a schoolboy and you were...
All but 5?
Miss Bridgerton!
Oh, pardon me.
Forgive me.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Film Independent Presents, our year-round screening and Q&A series, now virtual. I'm Brian Sheehan with Film Independent. Thank you for joining us to discuss all things Bridgerton and Halston on Netflix. First off, I'd like to thank some of our supporters, our lead sponsor, the HFPA, and our screening partner, Vision Media. If you have a question for today's guests, please use the Q&A button near the bottom of your screen. And today we have a very special guest moderator in Jessica Radloff, a West Coast editor of Glamour. And without further ado, I will let her take it away from here.
Brian, thank you so much. That was such a sweet introduction. And I feel so lucky today. This is just a dream panel of mine to get to do because I'm obsessed with Bridgerton. I'm obsessed with Halston. As work, I just had to rewatch it all over the weekend, which I mean is the greatest job truly that one can get to do because these shows are so visually stunning and entertaining. So congrats, first of all, to all of you. Like Brian said, my name is Jessica Radloff. I am the West Coast editor at Glamour, and I'm so excited to speak with the directors and talent from two of Netflix's newest and buzziest series for Film Independent. First, the Netflix period drama series Bridgerton, which was inspired by Julia Quinn's best-selling novels, follows the 8 close-knit siblings of the powerful Bridgerton family as they attempt to find love and ultimately themselves in Regency London's high society. With me today is director Julie Ann Robinson and actress Phoebe Dynevor, who stars as Daphne Bridgerton. Welcome both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here. Next, we have Netflix's newest limited series, Halston, which follows the legendary fashion designer as he leverages his single invented name and a worldwide fashion empire that's synonymous with luxury, sex, status, fame, literally defining New York City in the 1970s and 80s, and yet it feels so modern and so of its time today.
I have a vision. I'm going to change the face of American fashion.
Words like violence break the silence, come crashing into my little world, painful to me.
What we need is to figure out your signature.
Can't you?
What's going to make me see some gorgeous woman and say, that's a Halston.
With me now is EP and director Daniel Minahan and actress Krysta Rodriguez, who stars as icon Liza Minnelli. Welcome you both. So great to have you.
Thank you.
So I want to start with Krysta and Phoebe first, because as I said, both shows are so visually stunning. And I mean, right out of the gate, these shows were fan favorites. Phoebe, I'm guessing it had to be so overwhelming when Bridgerton premiered, just a little show that could, as we've heard. So what excited you most about working on the show and what made you the most anxious?
Oh, that's a big question. I mean, I think the first thing I saw when I got the email for the audition was Shondaland doing Regency England, which I thought was really exciting and new and something that we probably wouldn't have seen before in terms of, you know, especially women having real agency, which from someone who loves period dramas and grew up watching them, I hadn't really seen that take. So that was really exciting. And the nervousness just came from knowing that the books were so beloved by, there was a real fan base from the novels. So I think that's a different part of I'd never played someone who had already, been sort of was a character already and had been loved already. So I think the nerves was bringing that to life and hoping that the audience or the fans would I don't know, like what I did with her, I guess.
I think it's safe to say they did.
Yeah, well, yeah. Thank God.
That and more so. I remember I was on set visiting Bridgerton around episode 2, and we weren't even allowed to say that we were there, but somehow the fans figured out on Instagram that we were. And all of a sudden I had all these fan accounts following me, and I was like, how do they even know and the show is still a year from premiering. So it can cause a lot of anxiety. I was like, who's watching me?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Krysta, I can't even imagine what it was like to step in to Liza's shoes. I also heard that you contacted John Lithgow to ask him some questions ahead of time. So I cannot wait. I know you've told the story before, but explain, of course, what made you most excited about the role, what made you most anxious, and what some of that prep was like.
Yeah, I mean, I've been nodding the whole time that Phoebe was talking. It's very similar, where I got the email for Halston and it said Netflix Halston. I'm like, okay, great, 2 things I already love. And then it said Ryan Murphy, somebody I've always wanted to be able to work with and collaborate with. Ewan McGregor. Okay, like I'm hooked. What's the catch? Oh, it's Liza Minnelli. Like, I can't believe I have to figure out how to do that. And that was like my biggest excitement and challenge. And I was so nervous and continued to be nervous and still am sort of anxious all the time if people are watching it. But yeah, again, like I just had to, taking something that's so beloved and you have to kind of make it your own. And that's why, so John and I had worked together on a television show, and he played my dad. And I have a great history of like entertainment dads, like Nathan Lane played my father and John played my father. And so I have this great relationship with them that's very loving. And so I emailed him, I said, how did you do this? What did you do? Because of his portrayal of Winston Churchill. And, he really just said, don't worry so much about impersonation or getting all of those things so exactly right. Do what you can, but people want to see a human, and her sort of heart more than anybody. So just allow yourself to do that.
Yeah, I would love to know, actually, when you both went in for your first auditions, one, Krysta, did you try to look like Liza? Like, did you put on the fake eyelashes and do all that with the hair? And then Phoebe, did you try to borrow a costume, dress a certain way, wear your hair a certain way?
Yeah, I did a little bit. I did a little like nod. I didn't go full out, but I put on some lashes and I kind of slicked my hair down a little bit and wore a black turtleneck, which she was really famous for wearing. And that was really the first time I started to see the resemblance in a way that people were noticing. People in the waiting room mentioned it, the casting director mentioned it, and I thought, okay, so I'm not crazy. But you don't always want to come dressed as the thing, so I kind of just gave it a little bit of a hint.
I was going to say, I feel like that's like the number one thing that actors, like, it's always, you have to give a nod but not go all out, or people think you're crazy. I think I did the same. I mean, I hadn't read the books when I first auditioned, so I didn't know, and all I had was sides, so I honestly didn't know much about what I was doing. So I tried to, I think I did that old thing that I tend to do, the period dramas, where I'll plait my hair the night before and I'll wake up and for some reason, I think that looks kind of periody. So I think I did that. But yeah, that's about it. That's all I did.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. Julianne, I can't imagine the pressure of, you directed the first episode of Bridgerton, which introduces us to this absolutely stunning world. And then you also directed episode 6 called Swish, which features the most intimate, gorgeous, and yet complex scenes between Daphne and Simon. And it's set to Taylor Swift's Wildest Dreams. I mean, the whole thing, it's just absolutely epic.
Only looked at me this week for longer than 2 seconds, you would have seen. It is you I cannot sacrifice. I burn for you.
What were some of the challenges to bring that particular episode to life? Because we run the roller coaster of emotions between these two characters in some very intimate and dramatic scenes.
So episode 6 for me as a director was completely terrifying because it was about something that we could never speak about, and it was and we could never see. So it was completely told in subtext, and the truth is that that episode wouldn't have been an outstanding episode without the full collaboration of the wonderful actors, one of whom is here, and the bravery of those actors and the commitment to telling an emotional story that had never really been told on screen before. And I think it was a real true team effort. We were committed to incrementally telling the emotional journey of Daphne, and everybody was just fully on board, committed to doing that, including Chris Van Dusen, the creator. We worked as a team. And hopefully, you know, for the first time through a female gaze, tell this story of ultimately, you know, it's a very painful journey. Yeah. So I'm, you know, eternally grateful to the collaborators on that episode for making it possible.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Phoebe, I remember too I don't know if you remember when we sat down on the set, you were telling me that you really had never worked with a female director before. And this was such a unique experience in Shondaland to get to work with someone like Julianne. So how did she make you feel safe in that environment, especially on episode 6, which was, like we said, very intimate?
Yeah, I mean, working with Julianne was a joy, and I loved every second of it. And I had worked with female directors before, but I'd never been on something where there was, you know, we had more than one female director. And also, you know, we had an intimacy coordinator who was also a woman. And I think it was such a collaborative experience filming the sex scenes. We all talked about them so much and all talked about what we personally wanted out of the scenes, whether it was what we wanted in the shot or through the storyline. And I had, you know, real things that I wanted to make sure we did right with Daphne's journey, and Reggae had his things. And of course, Julianne had her shots that she wanted to get. So I think just the fact that it became such a collaborative experience, and I've never worked like that before. Like it's mostly just been like, okay, the director wants something, you do it. Like, you know, like I've done sex scenes before and it's like, okay, now grab her by the neck or whatever. And you're like, whoa, okay. You know, it's, you feel very out of control. And I think as an actor, yes, in a way we are pawns, like we are movable. And I very much appreciate that is part of our job. But I think in something like that, knowing that you also have a voice and a say and also a creative, like Julianne would listen to us creatively and from an actor perspective. So I think that collaboration just really helps and makes you feel very comfortable.
Absolutely. Julianne, you said you were terrified going into it. Now that it's all done and you were able to see the finished product with the music, with the editing, are you able to like remove yourself and watch it and just appreciate how beautifully it all came together? Or is that still too a little hard?
You know, I'm very tough on myself, on my work, so I'm never really happy. But I will say with this particular project, when I was working with Jim Flynn in the edit on my cut, I just kind of got a really good feeling, which is, you know, quite unusual. I thought, oh, I like this. I loved the performances of the actors. Jeff Jur, the cinematographer that I was lucky enough to work with, I've worked with a number of times before. The sumptuous feel of the costume and the sets. My biggest fear was that all the elements would fight each other, and that the performances and the hearts underneath the costumes wouldn't be able to truly communicate. And we wouldn't be able to really grab onto to these relationships. So it was really pleasing to see that it was working in harmony, because that was always my biggest ambition for the piece, and my biggest fear, that it wouldn't harmonize in a way. And then when I could see that it was starting to harmonize, I felt a tiny bit good about it.
Well, good. I hope you eventually feel a whole lot good about it.
Yeah.
Because
no, I do now. I do now.
Good. Because it's so beautiful. And Phoebe's performance, like you said, so brave, which is just incredible to watch. Speaking of ambition, Dan, I don't know how you are not on a vacation for the next 5 years, because it took you nearly 25 years to bring Halston to life, and then you directed all 5 episodes. As I was watching Halston, I was like, there he is again. He's direct. Like, did he sleep at all through this whole process? So obviously you were so passionate about bringing this story to life, and thank goodness for it, for us as a viewer. But talk about that passion, why you wanted to bring Halston's story to the screen.
I guess Halston was a big inspiration for me as a kid. You know, growing up in the suburbs in Connecticut in the late 70s, you know, I looked to New York and imagined the life that I would have. And, you know, with Warhol and Halston and all these people who I never met, but I was fascinated by them. And as I grew older, I started to read more about what had happened to Halston. And it was really fascinating. There was a New York Times article called "The Prisoner of 7th Avenue" that described his career, but how he was trapped in this company and stripped of any power and any ability to create. And then a book came out, which we ended up optioning, called Simply Halston. And that was fascinating to me because it charts his incredible rise of this guy, how he branded and marketed himself, sold his company, and then was stripped of his name and his identity. And to me, that just seemed really cinematic and really relevant. It was sort of about the emptiness of the American dream. And so we set out to make it as a movie 20-something years ago, and it just didn't fit into a movie script. It couldn't fit into a 90 or 120-minute movie because it was such a big story. You really had to tell the whole story rather than focus on one aspect of his life. And then all these years later, my producer, Christine Vachon, came to me and said, what do you think of optioning that book again? And suppose we do it as a limited series. And that had been working in series and particularly producing limited and, you know, for several years at that point. And it just seemed like the perfect way to really explore all of the intricacies and the character work of Halston and his world. And the thing about it that's so, I think is so rewarding is it's this little golden moment in New York history when all of these creative people came together. And Halston is a really good example because he surrounded himself with all of these really remarkable creatives. And then it was like the moment before everything just became gentrified. Everything from real estate to style to individuality, you know, to identity, everything's been commodified. And I think it makes that story really, really relevant now.
Did you always plan on directing all 5 episodes? Was that something that you set out to do? And do you regret that now? I mean,
I did,
but I can't even.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine after living with the material for so long in all of its different incarnations. I also felt that I knew the material better than anyone. And I thought of it as one big piece. I thought of it as one big 5-hour movie. So, there are directors that I love and respect, but this was my baby and I had to do it all myself. And no, I think somehow when you love something and you're really passionate about it, you find the energy and you just keep going.
Yeah, so true. And, like you said, to see New York in this way, it's so exquisite. Was there anything that you particularly wanted to make sure was 100% authentic, whether it was, I know for all of it, it pretty much was, but I mean, like Halston's apartment or the perfume bottles or, clothes. What did you want to make sure that maybe you even had the originals of that would add another layer to this story?
I was pretty rigorous about making sure that we got all of the interiors correct, that the costumes were correct. And I was lucky enough to work with Jariana San Juan, our costume designer, Mark Ricker, our production designer. But it was really important to me that it was all really accurate because it's the story of someone who is a world builder and a creator. And you really had to experience his genius to understand what he lost when they took it all away. So that was really, really important to me. But it was also, really all of the actors did an incredible amount of research into their characters because they were based on real people. We had Krysta, who just walked in and completely inhabited that role in a way that we'd never seen before, but she would call me and say things like, okay, I'm watching this video of Liza and she doesn't blink for this entire, I was like, send it to me, this entire 10-minute monologue, she doesn't blink once. That was the level of detail that Krysta and the actors were going into. Ewan was committed to finding the exact cigarette holder and the exact pens and pads that Halston drew with. And the same with Rebecca, who played Elsa, did an incredible amount of research. And they came to me like these fully formed characters. So it was top to bottom detail. And that was really important because these were people who lived for the image. They lived for the silhouette and the appearance of everything. So we went for it.
Yeah, you certainly did. And like I said, it's just so exquisite. Phoebe and Krysta, I want to talk to you about some of the performance style aspects of your roles, but also Krysta, so much attention is paid to the performances you give as Liza. But also one of my favorite aspects of the character is watching you and Ewan together in some of those more emotional scenes, because you see the compassion that she has for him and truly is an amazing friend. I thought that was so comforting to watch the two of them together in some of the moments where they're not on all the time. So what was it like working with Ewan for those more emotional scenes, just the two of them?
Well, that was one of my favorite parts. There were so many favorite parts, and all the nerdy, total authentic stuff that we were doing was a joy for me. But it really, one of the things I was also most concerned about, because I am a theater performer and most people assume that the musical numbers were the hardest part for me, but it really was more about wanting to make sure I honored that relationship between Liza and Halston. And, Ewan, you never know when somebody's going to be number one on the call sheet. The show is named after their character. You might never see them. You don't know what that relationship's going to be like. And it was immediately made clear that Ewan was a team player, wanted to get his hands dirty with the rest of us and be a real friend and coworker. And that was such a relief. And so that let us start right off the bat with our own relationship, and then being able to just play those scenes. And we had the same dialect coach about trying to get their sort of, both of them had very specific speech affectations. And we worked and worked and worked. And then Liz, the coach, at the end said, okay, now forget all of that and go fall in love with you and Blair. And I was like, right. yes, the easy part of my job. So so it just was really easy to fall in his eyes and just sort of know I would do anything for this person. And we really developed this great camaraderie together, which I'm so happy about.
You did, and it comes through on the screen beautifully. It's such a really special relationship to watch. Phoebe, I remember too, when I was on set, you're probably like, oh God, what did I tell you back then?
No, oh gosh, so young, naive.
I was going through all my notes, but I would love for you to talk about, I believe you had a dialect coach as well, but you also did a lot of dance training, and you had said that you were particularly worried about the dance scenes because you didn't feel you were
I'm not a dancer.
Yeah, you're like, I don't feel like I'm a great dancer.
Well, also I did that typical thing of being an actor and going to the audition and being like, by the way, I can dance, I can horse ride, I can do all the above, and I can play piano. And of course, I can't do any of those things. So I was really nervous when we got, and also like all the execs would turn up to our dance rehearsals, like the first one that we did, I think they were all there. So it was really nerve-wracking. I was like, I'm going to get recast. They're going to realize that I can't dance. But luckily, I don't know whether Reggae was just saying this to make me feel better or whether he actually didn't have any experience dancing either, but he was sort of made me feel like we were in the same boat. So that helped.
How many dance lessons did you have?
We had 6 weeks prep. So we would do like etiquette and dance lessons and horse riding and piano lesson. Well, sorry, I would do these things. We Reggae, me and Reggae would do dance rehearsals together. But I've said a few times, like, it was so formative for mine and Reggae's on-screen, relationship. I think it really helped with the chemistry, because when you're dancing, especially in that style, you have to look into each other's eyes and sort of trust each other, and it really forms a bond, I guess. So I'm really grateful for the dancing. And in the end, like, some of my favorite scenes, I'm so proud of those scenes because we would rehearse them for so long. And they especially the end of Act 1, that scene at the beginning, because that was like the first dance we ever rehearsed. And it was such a big moment in the journey of their storyline. So that's a really special dance for me. And I think we managed to get it right eventually.
Truly did. I was thinking to Julianne, what was it like for you to direct some of those major dance parties? I mean, I saw it firsthand, and it was unlike anything I had ever really seen before. So what was that like for you to direct, and what captivated you so much about Phoebe, who, as Phoebe said, you have to look into
it. We don't have enough time. We don't have enough time. I mean, I'll start with what captivated me about Phoebe. Just look at her. She's undeniable. I mean, she is everything that you would want for just, perfection in female form, according to the Queen. So there you are. I mean, and it doesn't come along that often. And in addition to the kind of the look, she's just brings such personality and such complexity and such emotional depth that's really rare. But in addition to all of that, I think there's just a contemporary, really present day sensibility that I was really I love that. I wanted the character to be completely relatable to people now who feel enormous pressure due to social media, due to being photoshopped, seeing people. And so that's something that I feel about Phoebe that really communicates. In terms of those big dance sequences, I I was very lucky to be able to rehearse, first of all, with the actors and with the dancers. So I had all of the puzzle pieces in my mind. And I had pre-blocked, I knew where the locations were, so I pre-blocked the scenes in my head and how I was going to shoot them. And I was really lucky because in a situation like this, where it's I have a theatre background, so I come from live performance. And I was very lucky to be working with actors who are so skilled and who were on board, because when it's such an epic piece, you really need all of the puzzle pieces. There was 33 small interactions and episodes in the first ballroom sequence, each of which had to be shot like a separate scene, and it had to be shot in conjunction, in continuity with the dancing that was going on behind them. So I needed to know exactly where all of the dancers were at any given time in any given conversation that was going on around the dance hall. So, I mean, what can I say? It's almost like putting together a jigsaw puzzle. You shoot it on the day and you're not going to get that day back with that number of dancers. And so it's just, you get into the edit and you just hope that you haven't missed any moments. And the other thing that made it more complicated was that we were shooting into the room, not into the walls of the room. So that was hence the need for a lot of continuity and collaboration with the choreographer and the DP. In fact, we pre-laid out the shooting style of the show and then the techniques for shooting that particular big ballroom, the promenade ballroom sequence. So it came together, but that is a lot of that's a lot of planning goes into that, and also working with a great bunch of actors and dancers.
I'm just saying Netflix should have sent you all on a vacation after this because I'm exhausted. I'm exhausted for all you guys just hearing it. And then before we get to our last question and then open it up to audience questions, Krysta and Dan, talk to me about some of the scenes from Studio 54 to when we see Krysta do these incredible dance numbers. I mean, when the Paris song, I wish I had the right words in my head right now, but it's just all amazing what you brought to life. So Dan, what was it like to watch Krysta just create magic on this set?
Krysta made it really easy. I have a big admission to make. I really hadn't directed musical numbers before. Didn't mention that when we met Krysta, but
I love how many secrets you all keep before you start a project.
I knew what I wanted to see. We knew what we wanted it to look and feel like, but I really relied on Krysta a lot. And Krysta worked really closely with our choreographer, Susan Meisner, and especially with Bonjour Paris, which has 2 backup dancers, lifts, smoking, dancing, umbrellas. It was remarkable. And I couldn't go to rehearsals because we were filming, but I would get to, Krysta and Suze would send me little videos, after the rehearsals. And then we would kind of shape things, or I'd give a couple of little notes. But we just went out there and did it. When you have a Broadway performer like Krysta, you really, it's a lot of the work is done for you.
And it was just that easy, right, Krysta?
Yeah. I mean, it was actually really joyful. It really was, because I have such a great relationship. I'd worked with Susie before, so she and I felt very safe with each other. One of the dancers and I had gone to college together. Another one was in a Broadway show with a bunch of friends of mine. It felt very much like we were putting together a number, very much similarly to how Liza would do it, and how you would just trust that one person that would guide you through that, and then have the people around you that you trusted, that you could just fling yourself into. But, and so that part was really fun. It was actually a real joy. And then also because we shot a lot of those songs, Bonjour Paris and I Gotcha, all during COVID, it was a very fun experience to be able to watch live performance. It's like this was the only place in New York City you were getting to see a live performance was on the set of Halston. So the crew was really fun. They would applaud and get excited and miss theater like we did. But what Dan was able to do is sort of like the opposite of what they were talking about with their big numbers. We had to shoot Studio 54 with like 25 people. So his challenge lied in like, how are we going to make the most ruckus, sweaty, just the place to be in a time where you can't be near anybody. And I was amazed that he was able to pull that off.
A lot of sleight of hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, moving people around into the backgrounds of everybody's shots.
Close-ups, a lot of hips gyrating, like only seeing hips. You know, you want to just like get to the essence of what it is. But it was amazing, and actually what they did as well was recreate all of Studio 54. So as much as there was not that many people there, the space itself was enormous and very, very meticulously recreated. So I kept saying that it was like someone had thrown a private party for us at Studio 54. Like it was our private birthday party, and we were dancing with our friends, looking amazing.
You really did. And by the way, speaking of looking amazing, before we get to the audience questions, we have to talk about the costumes and the hair and makeup, which just, again, what else can I say? It is absolutely breathtaking. So I would love for you all, Phoebe, Krysta, Julie, and Dan, talk to me about how that enhanced the performances, the aesthetic, and just brought these really rich worlds to life. Whoever would like to jump in first.
Julia.
Go on, Julia.
I think actually one challenge that we had was how complicated the costumes were to actually produce. Every costume was created from the ground up, and that is including all the background artists that you see on camera. They were all specifically tailored for specific background artists, and constantly there was kind of a need for more and more because the sequences were very big. So as a director, I was always tiling, we call it tiling these background artists so that in post-production we could put them, I can imagine there was a lot of that in Studio 54. We could put them into the background of shots, because actually creating the number of costumes that would have been required to make a sequence like Vauxhall Gardens feel full and rich, it was actually impossible to do. But I'm really curious to hear Phoebe, what you've got to say, especially about Mr. Pearl.
Oh yeah, well, I would say firstly, probably the most exhausting part of playing Daphne was the amount of fittings that I had. I mean, there was like, I think in the end, it was 104 dresses that Daphne had made from scratch completely, and like sewn on. So I would have like 2 fittings a week that were like 4 hours long. So it was exhausting for me. So I can't imagine what it was like for all our incredible, designers, and they would hand stitch everything on, and it was just so specific and amazing. And Ellen Morojnik, our amazing designer, was just so detailed and so brilliant. And so just watching that and being involved in that process was tiring and amazing, to see it all come to life, really. And the colors and everything about, the Bridgerton blues and Daphne's transformation as she gets older and goes into sort of purple and sort of different. I mean, I learned so much about fabrics, honestly, because I think, we transitioned into velvets because it made her look older. So all of that process was so exciting and interesting for me. I'd never seen such a detailed costume department or been involved in that before. So that was pretty epic and amazing. And the amazing corsets that we had handmade as well for our bodies by the wonderful Mr. Pearl, who is a legend in the corset game. and that really helped because they were fitted to us. So actually they weren't that painful because they fit our bodies. So yeah, the whole experience was amazing. And as an actor, and I'm sure Krysta will speak to this more than that I can, but it's so helpful. And it's like the real sort of final touch of like, oh, this is who she is, you know, this is her. It really brings it all together and makes all the hard work that you do behind the scenes come to life in a way that's really exciting and magical.
Yeah, we made a show about a fashion designer, so we knew that the show would live and die by those costumes, that we needed to recreate actual collections from his career. And Jeriana San Juan just set out to do it and was very diligent and very exacting. She used very few originals. She would study originals and then recreate the collections that way. And the interesting thing about Halston stuff is it's so timeless that to make it feel different and new, we had to make contrasts. So the people that come into his world are rich hippies, society ladies in Chanel suits, you know, punk rock kids. Like there's all these different worlds, so that Halston's world is this completely austere, realized, beautiful, you know, sort of silhouette. Krysta wears one of my favorite costumes, which is the red dress, which Ewan actually had to learn to make on her. And that was fascinating to watch. I don't know what you have to say about that.
That was one of my favorite looks. And I think what it is that it is what Halston did, which is he created these no fuss outfits for women coming out of this time of foundation garments and corsets and, you know, girdles and all these different things that you were having to create a shape to look womanly. And he said, a woman will look like a woman if I put fabric on their body. So that's what I love about that scene that we shoot, is that he says, I have this huge bra, and he's take off the bra, take off the underwear, and he just drapes one piece of fabric on me and pins it in one place. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever worn. And it's so easy. And Jeriana talks about how it was really hard to get some of his original designs because they've been worn, because they've been loved and they've been danced in and they've been lived in. And so what was great about it was being able to, because they were being created for us, it didn't feel like I was wearing a Liza Minnelli costume. It felt like I was Liza Minnelli getting fitted in a very specific outfit that someone made to make me look a certain way. And that felt better than me trying to like look perfect in her real outfits. So it was a real joy to be able to nerd out about all that stuff. And Jeriana and I would be looking at the hemlines and the necklines and making sure they looked a certain way. And yeah, I loved every costume that I have in the show. Even if, you know, as an actress, you want to look a certain way. Sometimes you want to, you know, what looks good on you, and you want to highlight certain things and not. So there's a freedom in being like, I'm just recreating. I would never wear that yellow pantsuit to get married in, but because Liza did it, it's the best pantsuit I've ever worn. And you can kind of release that fear about what you feel like you need to look like.
I would have lost my mind on set. I'm so glad before the pandemic, I was able to visit Bridgerton to really see. I couldn't believe they let me in the costume trailer and then also pick up the stuff like the hats and the clothes and I thought they were crazy. But God bless them, because they let me. And just to feel, like you said, Phoebe, the fabrics, you know, going from lace to velvet, it is a work of art. The costume designer, I remember, I'm totally blanking on his name right now, but he was explaining that it was like, you know, the Kennedy family was, you know, what the Bridgertons were. And then
the Kardashians were.
Yeah, the Featheringtons were like the Kardashians. And it was just incredible to see that up close. So I would have lost my mind, Dan, on the set of Halston with just every creation. It needs to be in a museum at some point, because it's just truly incredible. Couple audience questions I want to get to here. This is from Kevin, and it's for Dan and Krysta. Halston was shot at a very risky time during the pandemic. You guys, you finished only 2 episodes before you shut down, or was it 2 weeks and then you shut down?
About one and a half.
Oh my goodness. Well, Kevin says here he was called in to be an extra and had to pass solely out of the fear of COVID. And now he's been kicking himself ever since. But how scary was it to come back from that 5-6 month break, still during the height of the pandemic, to finish these last 3.5 episodes? What was that like for you to do?
They, you know, I'll speak to that because they called us and they warned us, we're thinking about coming back. How do you feel about that? And there was conversations about, we're going to get our protocols in place and then we're going to pitch it to you. I essentially had a pitch meeting with producers and COVID officers saying, here's how we're going to protect you. And I almost got emotional at the end of the meeting. And I just said, just thank you so much for taking so much care. And Netflix and Killer Films and all the people involved were took such care of all of us and spared no expense to make sure that we felt safe and cared for. And I know what that took. I have a little idea of what that took monetarily, for how many bodies had to be involved to get it ready. And I was just so grateful that someone was willing to put all of that work in to make us feel safe. So I felt safe 100% of the time. I never once felt uncomfortable. You know, and everybody was working at full speed to make sure we felt that way. And nobody was trying to cut corners or feel like, you know, break the rules. Everyone knew how important this was. And we finished the whole series. We never had to shut down again. We never had an outbreak. We never had, you know, anything that spread to anybody. And I never was concerned about it, which is a huge testament because it was at a very volatile time in the pandemic. So I'm very grateful to them. And Dan, if you want to touch on that too.
No, I just thought the cast was completely fearless, but we had really, really good health and safety people with us, and everybody felt safe. And in fact, it kind of, you know, there was a kind of, we needed to all feel the kind of joy of the 70s and feel free. And I think it allowed us. I think when everybody finally really felt comfortable and safe, you know, we could play. And that was really important. And it meant a lot to me that they were so rigorous that we never had to shut down. We were really well cared for.
Yeah. Phoebe and Julianne, how close were you to that shutdown window? Because
a week before.
A week before.
Like literally it was like a week before, I think. Like I remember the last few weeks of filming, we were all like started talking about COVID and but there was never the fear of shutting down because we hadn't got to that stage yet in the pandemic. It was all just like, have you heard about this virus in China? And then literally I think it happened within a week or 2 weeks of us wrapping, that everything shut down. So we just made it. Thank gosh, because I really don't know how we would have done that, finished that series off at that time.
Just incredible. Last thing here, I hate that we're almost out of time, but I would love again for everybody to tell me, aside from just the pure joy you get from watching both of these amazing series, what do you hope the audience takes away from the overall story, both in Bridgerton, with the Bridgerton and Featherington families, and then also for Halston and his life and the cast of characters that surrounded him? They were all equally as important, Elsa and Liza, you know, and all of them. So let's start with Krysta and Dan first. What do you hope viewers take away from Halston and the rest of the people that helped make him who he was?
For me, I hope people take away an appreciation for this person who is sort of unfairly erased and removed, you know. And I think I hope they recognize the value of creativity and a kind of the respect for the creative family that he created. You know, I think it couldn't be more relevant now with people obsessed with branding and marketing themselves. And I think it's a little bit of a cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it shows a human side where there's this person who wanted his name everywhere, and it's not because of some maniacal world domination plan. He believed he was good at so many things and wanted to put that out there. And I think he just had a passion for beautifying, and that got a little, it got out of control because of the world that he lived in at the time. And he sort of took the bullet for how people can now become international names because of how he was taken down by it. And I think it's interesting. I knew who Halston was, but so many people don't. And I'm just glad that people are knowing his name and starting to understand the impact he had on. He wasn't just a designer, he was American fashion for decades. And the fact that we don't really know about him is sad. And I'm glad that people will get to see the stuff that he was able to create.
It gave me such a newfound respect for him and for the people around him. I've never done such a deep dive on the real life characters involved in so long, and it just is a fascinating story. So congratulations again. And then Julianne and Phoebe, what do you hope viewers take away when they finish? I'm sure people have watched Bridgerton 5 times by now. So aside from pure joy, what do you hope they take away from these stories and these families that we see?
I'm speaking personally, I'm really proud to be part of a production where people of color are firmly placed within a period drama. I think it's really important that everybody can see themselves or elements of themselves reflected on screen. And I love the fact that this is a reimagined history. That's for me, and that goes to my work to this point. That's what I'm proudest of.
I will second that, because I grew up loving period dramas, and to see a period drama that, reflects the world that we're living in such a beautiful way is really wonderful. And also female pleasure was a thing that I really, let's see more female pleasure, because girls have it and they, they want to have sex. And I think that's seen from the way women around the world have reacted to reggae Jean Page. So that as well. And just the joy of like love in all its forms, whether that's friendship or romantically. It's that's it.
I think it's so beautifully said. I am just so impressed with all of you. I could keep going for hours because what you did is truly a remarkable feat. So thank you all. Thank you to Film Independent. Thank you to Netflix for the trip that I'm sure they're still going to send Julianne and Krysta and Dan and Phoebe on at some point. For the amazing work that you did. But it has been such a pleasure today. And thank you all again so much for coming.
Thank you, Jessica.
Jessica, thank you.